I thank the chairman, I thank my colleagues, and fundamentally this bill titled the Keep Your Coins Act of 2023 does just that. It protects the right of individuals to keep their coins. Coins are another term for the tokens represented by digital assets, and it promotes really just the private ownership of private property and the ability to transact that in a digital way with your own keys. So there's a phrase, not your keys, not your coins. There's a public key that's on a distributed ledger, but that needs to be some level of anonymized. The private key is the part that unlocks it, and you can convey the custody of that token, key, coin to someone else by the way you sign it. This is done with software. Some people call it self-hosted wallets. There are software and hardware wallets, but fundamentally, once you look at the information on a screen, you could write it on paper, you could hope you remember it, but there's no one to reset it normally, or you could transcribe it onto titanium plates. There are all kinds of ways where people could have self-custody, and right now, self-custody is not illegal, but there have been efforts by Secretary Mnuchin, as he was outgoing Secretary of Treasury, to try to limit self-custody and to limit self-hosted wallets. There have been contemplated actions by FinCEN and others, and certainly there are members of this committee that call for limitations, essentially on the ability to own your own private property. So this language in this bill protects that right. It protects it in a meaningful way. Right as we were introducing this for the first time last Congress, Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada was clamping down on people who were engaging in free speech. Now, this isn't Canada, and I don't know how protected free speech is there, but you would think that your bank account's protected. He froze their bank accounts for being at a public protest. And then when people said we can bypass that by using Bitcoin, he called on people who custody Bitcoin to freeze those assets. Now, thankfully, that's part of the point of some of these assets. They're not easily cancelable. But part of the key point of it is self-custody. When FTX was failing, people bought digital assets on the FTX platform, and when it failed, there are people still hoping that they get their assets back. The people whose assets have been protected are the people who self-custodied it. They moved the value that they purchased on FTX. Let's say they bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, and their money tripled to $3,000, not an uncommon experience over time. And they wanted to bank that gain, or they thought, you know, I just want to stay in control of my own coins. They downloaded it. They have the full value of that, regardless of what happened to FTX. So the surest way to stay in control of your own assets is self-custody. It comes with risks. Most people aren't going to choose self-custody, but they can, and we should defend it. So good governments defend freedom. That's exactly what this bill does, and I encourage all of our colleagues to support it. With that, I yield.
Well, the gentleman yield
to the chairman. Yes.
So what is the concept you're trying to preserve? Put this in terms of, I have $100 in cash. How does that work in this digital setting?
Yeah, so in the digital setting, the first way you get into a digital asset is normally from a bank account. And when you move from cash into a digital asset, normally that will trigger what's known as a cash transaction report. The bank has KYC, BSA, AML reporting requirements, and there's essentially a marker at the on-ramp. And then when someone comes out of self-custody into a bank account, say they appreciated in Bitcoin and now they want to come back to US dollars and hold that in their bank account, there's a similar CTR there. So there's on-ramps and off-ramps, and then there's persistent surveillance on public blockchain. It's essentially like the game film. You can rewind it and watch the footage from every angle. So people are solving crimes because they can follow everything on the blockchain.